After the success of Deadpool, we are now blessed with the opportunity to finally see an R-rated or 15-rated Wolverine movie, which would see Hugh Jackman don in the claws for one final time, until Ryan Reynolds just comes and ropes him to do another one. Spoilers ahead, this is going to be my uneducated opinion on the movie Logan. So James Mangold is back as director, and this time it really feels like he is able to take the gloves off and creatively be able to do what he envisioned. Not one part of this movie feels forced or out of place in any way, unlike the sudden giant silver samurai that we see at the end of the Wolverine. This is very loosely based on the Old Man Logan comic run and the X-23 comics by Craig Kyle. Surely there must have been a conscious decision to take a lot of inspiration from The Last of Us, because I remember when this first came out, a lot of people were saying this was the best video game adaptation to ever be made, because it was essentially the game. With its similar storytelling in delivering someone to a certain location and then seeing the protagonists form a strong bond together, and having some imageries that seem straight out of the game itself. This has a really strong opening, setting up what we are getting ourselves into. It's incredibly brutal with limbs flying all over the place and showing a very weakened version of Logan. And it's not just Logan in this condition, there are lots of other characters who are also a shadow of their former selves, just completely exhausted and struggling with their current living situations. It hits home that little bit more if you've been like me and have watched every other movie in this franchise up until this point, but I'm not saying that you have to go out and watch every other installment to understand what this movie is trying to do. If anything, a huge positive I can say about this movie is you can go in completely blind and still have those really emotional moments hit you hard. Of all the movies that I've seen him in, I generally think that this is Hugh Jackman's best performance. It really shouldn't be a surprise that he has been brought back to be in the next Deadpool movie, because it's hard to think about anyone else in this role. He brings so much emotional weight to the character and puts a lot of effort into every fight scene he is in. Logan going full berserker mode is the fucking best, and especially when he is teaming up with Laura at the end of the movie, it is incredible to watch. After every violent interaction, even I felt as though I should just go to bed for the rest of the day, but even though he seems fully done with everything, coping with the pain and the sleepless nights, Logan always goes back to help Xavier get the treatment that he needs. I even think Patrick Stewart puts in his best performance as Charles Xavier. It's really heartbreaking to see him in this condition throughout the entirety of this movie, especially when he is constantly apologizing to everyone he has affected at the casino. A quick mention, but the effect that they do to make everyone halted in place because of his seizures is really effective, and Logan's slow but deadly course back to save Xavier is a phenomenal sequence. I also do really like the interactions between Xavier and Logan together, their constant bickering and them acting like an old married couple, and after all the intense shit that goes down, it's really nice to have the scenes with the new family that they come across. It gives that much needed breather and having all this downtime with the new family, who I actually grew to quite like, and then also it gives us the hope that maybe Charles and Logan could have a good future together after all this nonsense has gone on about. Until everyone is brutally murdered and our hopes are completely shattered in front of us. Xavier's end has got to be one of the most heartbreaking scenes that I have seen in a while. Recognizing what he had previously done and finally opening up about it, but then it all being for nothing as he is not talking to the real Logan. Dafne Keen, what an incredible performance by her. She is so good, and what makes this even better, this is her first movie that she is involved with, and she leaves such a big impression. The decision to finally allow Laura to speak directly after Xavier's death is really interesting, and I feel works quite well. You go through the same process in a way that Logan does in being really frustrated, but ultimately you feel like a massive weight is just lifted off of your shoulders. The fight choreography is so good when it involves her, showing how agile Laura as a character can be, and I think I read somewhere that Daphne did not all but most of her own action scenes. The ending is so well done. Daphne and Hugh managed to pull off that final scene together so impactfully. Laura saying "Daddy" so subtly, and Logan going through his final words and saying,
"Oh, this is what it feels like."
I don't think it will ever not make me weep. Then to tug on our heartstrings even more, to have Laura then turn the cross into an X at the end on Logan's grave, I don't think I can think of a more perfect end to the character. Stephen Merchant I also think is a really good addition to the cast, and in my opinion a much better interpretation of Caliban than what we get in Apocalypse, where he just constantly speaks in third person, and I just think is a weird bit. He also has that feeling of, I just cannot be fucked to deal with this anymore, but even though he is aware of Logan just being this broken piece of shit, he still tries to connect with him and get him to open up about what he's been going through mentally. And I mean, also he blows himself up so that he can help his friends escape later on in the movie. What a legend. This movie has a slight western feel to it, and Boyd Holbrook as Donald Pierce fits into this villainous role really well. I really like his threatening presence early on, and also that he's just not a perfect villain either. He does get knocked the fuck out, but then comes back with his full force when he loses his patience later on. I remember being a little bit taken aback about seeing a younger version of Wolverine be the main physical force against Logan, and it could have had a negative effect on the movie, but I've come to really appreciate his inclusion, putting a withered version of Logan up against his younger self who is in his prime. It makes every encounter they have together incredibly tense. Not only would it be seemingly impossible to beat his younger self physically, but it also must be incredibly traumatizing to see what he was like in front of him, to fully experience the animal that he was like to everyone else in his past. Now, X-24 might be the physical obstacle that Logan has to try and get through, but Richard E. Grant plays a smaller role, but as this normal yet truly evil human being who's at the head of this corporation, and he does that in a really effective way. I think a lot of comics fans were expecting Mr. Sinister to pop up, given that we have seen the Essex Corps show up in the post-credit scenes of Apocalypse, but given the tone of this movie, I think they did the right choice in having a human just be awful and experimenting on developed kids as another antagonist. So this movie was set in 2029, so 6 years after the future events of Days of Future Past, as that was set in 2023. But I'm really glad it only gives hints about what has happened in the past, and it doesn't go out of its way to just be like, oh, do you remember this shit that happened in the past? Oh, that was really cool. Oh, do you remember that? Oh yeah, this stuff happened, didn't it? Trying to tie everything together so we know where exactly this takes place in the timeline. But no, this movie just lets you try and piece things together yourself whilst telling its own story. There are a couple references to previous movies like the adamantium bullet, and you could be one of those muppets that is like, actually that shouldn't have killed Wolverine at the end because the adamantium bullet in X-Men Origins didn't pierce his fucking skull. Who cares? It doesn't really matter. This movie is absolutely incredible, and I can just forgive those plot holes. It doesn't matter. But I think one of my favourite callbacks is in Logan's death and how it connects to what Kimiko said in The Wolverine.
I see you on your back. There's blood everywhere. You're holding your own heart in your hand.
And in this, he is holding Laura's hand as he is dying. Fuck me, that is so good. And that's what I really like in being the world building in this. Whether it's subtle or not, the small snippets we get of what happened to the rest of the mutants, implying Xavier was the one that accidentally killed everyone after having his initial seizures, Logan slowly being poisoned by the adamantium inside him, so that's what is suppressing his healing abilities, having X-Men comics being a thing in this world and loosely based off of the real life events that the heroes had to go through, and the continuation of the world seeing the mutants as lesser beings, where in this one it seems a little bit more intense. The video on the phone is really engaging in showing what experiments the children had to go through, hearing that they shouldn't be seen as children and more things, being really dehumanizing towards them, and having all that horrible imagery makes you feel sick but you can't really look away. This film has some pretty funny moments as well, from the children cutting Logan's hair, and also Logan when he is grieving about Xavier just doing what he does best and laying into a car with a shovel. Whether that's meant to be funny or not, that's a different question, but the comedic moments are small but are much needed to alleviate all the tension. And to top it all off, there is no post-credit scenes attached to this movie, which is absolutely the right choice. When trying to think of flaws in this movie, I couldn't really think of any, to be honest. That's how much I love it. But then my girlfriend did remind me, you unfortunately can't watch it for the first time ever again. So thanks a bunch, I guess. They did actually make a black and white version of this movie when they released it onto physical media, which that's a really cool addition, and I kind of wish that more movies would do that. I know they're doing it with Godzilla -1, it's called like Godzilla -1 minus color, so I'm excited to see that when that eventually comes out. If Deadpool and Wolverine ends up being a big disappointment, we still got this to go back and watch. It's not like things that come out in the future just tarnishes the reputation of things that came before it that are beloved. I'm trying to think of examples that go completely against the comments I just made, so I'll try and put them here if I remember them. But I think people need to start realizing that if you loved a franchise so much and what is happening to said franchise is pissing you off, just don't watch it. You still have all the other stuff that came before it that made you fall in love with it in the first place. It's not going to tarnish that. So the budget of this movie was $97 million, and at the worldwide box office, this grossed $619 million. I honestly think that this might be one of my favorite movies ever made. I'll have to double check on that list if I can ever be bothered to make one. It holds really strong when viewed by itself, and it's a small scale movie, so it relies on the great characters to carry it forward. So, like with every other opinion video that I've done, let's give a look at the trailer to see if it's any good. I mean, of course it is. Just as I remember, the first trailer for Logan is fucking incredible, and just to have Johnny Cash singing throughout the entirety of it, perfect choices. What a trailer. And I think that's about it. Thank you everybody so much for watching. If you'd like to give it a like, comment down below what you thought of the movie. Where does this rank in your favourite movies, or I guess favourite superhero movies? Comment down below also what I could do better for next time. Share around with your friends and family if you think they'd enjoy this sort of content. Subscribe, ding the notification bell. And if you want to see more of me, I'm on twitch.tv/Rizakins. There I'm currently going through Bloodborne. Nearly finished it, I think. We'll find out when I next stream it. And I also stream with my girlfriend Jem and my good friend Sarah Razzie. We play card games together, obviously. And hope to see you there. Thank you everybody so much again for watching, and take care.